Alcatraz Island, a name that echoes through history, shrouded in mystery and intrigue. A small rocky island in San Francisco Bay. Its rugged terrain and isolated location made it the perfect site for a prison. In 1934, it became a federal prison, a fortress of solitude for the most dangerous criminals, the most notorious prison in America, a place where hope was scarce and escape was deemed impossible. Alcatraz was known as the Rock. It was inescapable. The currents were strong, the water was cold, the island was a natural fortress surrounded by treacherous waters. No one had ever escaped, or so everyone thought. The prison's reputation was built on its impenetrability. Alcatraz housed the most dangerous criminals, men who had committed heinous crimes and were deemed too dangerous for other prisons. Gangsters like Al Capone and George Machine Gun Kelly. The prison was inescapable. It was a place where the most infamous criminals were sent to be forgotten. It had thick walls, iron bars, and watchful guards. The guards were everywhere. They watched every move. The security was tight, and the surveillance was constant. The prison was designed to break spirits. The harsh conditions were meant to crush any thoughts of escape. Prisoners lived in small cells, cramped and isolated. They had little to no privacy. They had little contact with the outside world. They endured harsh treatment. The guards were strict. The food was bad. Life on Alcatraz was a daily struggle for survival. Alcatraz was a place of despair, a place where hope went to die. Despite its reputation, some inmates plotted to escape. They were determined to find a way out, no matter the cost. They were desperate for freedom. The thought of escaping consumed their every waking moment. They yearned for a life outside the prison walls. They knew the risks. Escape seemed impossible, but the human spirit is resilient, and the desire for freedom is powerful. But they had to try. For some, the dream of freedom was worth any risk, even if it meant facing the treacherous waters of San Francisco Bay. Frank Morris arrived at Alcatraz in 1960. He was no ordinary inmate. Known for his sharp intellect and cunning nature, Morris had a reputation that preceded him. His arrival at Alcatraz was a significant event, marking the beginning of one of the most infamous escape attempts in the prison's history. Morris was a cunning and intelligent man. His criminal record was extensive, filled with numerous escape attempts from other high-security prisons. Each time he managed to outsmart the authorities, making him a legend among inmates. He had a history of escaping from other prisons. His ability to find and exploit weaknesses in prison security systems was unparalleled. This made him a constant headache for prison officials. He was determined to escape Alcatraz. The prison, known for its high security and isolation, was considered inescapable, but for Morris it was just another challenge to overcome. He studied the prison's routines. He observed the guards. He looked for weaknesses. Every detail was meticulously noted, every routine analyzed. Morris was patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Anglin brothers, John and Clarence, arrived in 1961. They were not just any inmates, they were seasoned criminals with a history of bank robberies and jailbreaks. They were bank robbers from Florida. Their criminal activities had made them infamous, and their skills in mechanics and construction were well known. They were also experts in mechanics and construction. This expertise would prove invaluable in their future plans. The Anglin brothers were not just brawn, they had the brains to match. They had a reputation for being tough and resourceful. Their resilience and determination were well known among the inmate population. They were not easily intimidated. They were willing to take risks. The Anglin brothers were not afraid of the consequences. They were driven by a desire for freedom that overshadowed any fear of failure. The three men met in the prison workshop. It was here that their plan began to take shape. The workshop provided the perfect cover for their secret meetings and planning sessions. They discovered they had a common goal. Each of them was determined to escape the confines of Alcatraz. Their shared ambition brought them together, forming a bond that would be crucial for their plan. They all wanted to escape. The desire for freedom was a powerful motivator. It fueled their determination and gave them the strength to pursue their daring plan. They decided to work together. Combining their skills and knowledge, they formed a formidable team. Each member brought something unique to the table, making their plan more robust. They shared their skills and knowledge, Morris's cunning, the Anglin brothers' mechanical expertise, and their collective determination created a synergy that was hard to beat. They developed a daring plan. It was intricate and required precision. They crafted tools, created blueprints, and rehearsed their moves. Every aspect was carefully thought out. The other inmates knew about the escape plan. Word spread quickly in the prison. Some were skeptical, while others were inspired by their audacity. Most of them thought it was crazy. The idea of escaping from Alcatraz seemed impossible to many. They couldn't fathom how anyone could succeed where so many had failed. They called the men fools. The skepticism was palpable. Many inmates mocked the trio, believing their plan was doomed from the start. They said they would die trying to escape. The warnings were dire. Fellow inmates predicted a grim fate for Morris and the Anglin brothers, convinced that their attempt would end in tragedy. But the men were not deterred. Their resolve was unshaken. The doubts and mockery only strengthened their determination to prove everyone wrong. They were determined to succeed. Failure was not an option. Their eyes were set on freedom, and they were willing to risk everything to achieve it. Frank Morris was the mastermind of the escape. His reputation as a brilliant strategist was well earned, and his intellect was unmatched among his peers. Born into a life of hardship, Morris had to rely on his wits from a young age, developing a keen sense of observation and an ability to think several steps ahead. He was a brilliant strategist. His mind was always at work, constantly analyzing and planning. He spent countless hours reading and studying, absorbing every bit of information that could be useful. His fellow inmates often saw him deep in thought, his eyes scanning the pages of a book or staring off into the distance as he formulated his next move. He had a high IQ. In fact, his intelligence was so remarkable that it set him apart from everyone else. He excelled in problem solving and had an uncanny ability to see patterns where others saw chaos. This intellectual prowess was both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weapon. He used his intelligence to devise a plan so intricate, so audacious that it just might work. Morris noticed something interesting. He meticulously sketched out every detail, leaving nothing to chance. His plan was a masterpiece of ingenuity, combining his knowledge of the prison's layout with his understanding of human behavior. A plan so intricate, so audacious that it just might work. Morris noticed something interesting. The concrete around the ventilation grills in their cells was weak. This discovery was the key to their escape, a small but crucial flaw in the prison's defenses. The concrete around the ventilation grills in their cells was weak. It could be chipped away. This weakness was their opportunity, a chance to break free from the confines of their cells and make their way to freedom. It could be chipped away. Morris and his fellow inmates began the painstaking process of chipping away at the concrete, bit by bit. It was slow, arduous work, but they were determined. Every small piece of concrete they removed brought them one step closer to their goal. This was their way out. The ventilation grills led to an unguarded utility corridor behind their cells. This hidden passage was their lifeline, a secret route that could lead them to freedom if they could just reach it. They could access the unguarded utility corridor behind their cells. This corridor was a maze of pipes and wires, dark and narrow, but it was their best chance. Navigating it would be dangerous, but Morris had faith in his plan and in the determination of his fellow escapees. Morris found discarded saw blades and spoons in the prison workshop. These simple tools, overlooked by the guards, became their instruments of escape. With ingenuity and patience, they transformed these everyday items into the means to carve their way to freedom. He used these simple tools to chip away at the concrete. Each stroke of the saw blade, each scrape of the spoon was a step closer to liberation. The work was grueling, but Morris and his team were relentless. He worked slowly and patiently. Every movement was calculated, every action deliberate. They couldn't afford to make mistakes. The risk of discovery was ever present, but Morris's meticulous nature ensured that they stayed on track. He hid his progress from the guards. It was dangerous work. The guards were always on the lookout for any signs of escape attempts, but Morris was careful. He concealed the evidence of their efforts, making sure that their work remained undetected. But freedom was worth the risk. The other inmates helped. They acted as lookouts. They watched for guards and warned Morris and his team of any approaching danger. Their cooperation was crucial to the success of the plan. They disposed of the concrete dust. They provided encouragement. Every small act of support, every word of encouragement helped to keep the morale high and the plan moving forward. The escape plan was a team effort. It required the combined efforts of everyone involved. Each person had a role to play, and their success depended on their ability to work together. It required trust and cooperation. Without trust, the plan would fall apart. But Morris and his team had built a bond of trust and cooperation that made their escape possible. They were united in their quest for freedom, and together, they would achieve the impossible. Section 4, the Anglin brothers. The Anglin brothers brought their own expertise to the escape plan. They were skilled with their hands. They were used to working with tools. They knew how to build things and how to take them apart. They used their skills to create lifelike dummy heads. They used soap, toilet paper, and real hair. They made these dummies to fool the guards. The dummies would buy them time. The brothers also worked on building a raft. They used raincoats and cement. They stole these materials from around the prison. They worked in secret. They used their skills to turn ordinary objects into tools of escape. The Anglin brothers were fearless. They were not afraid of the guards. They were not afraid of the water. They were determined to escape. They were willing to do whatever it took. Section 5, a daring plan takes shape. The escape plan was complex and risky. It involved meticulous planning and perfect timing. The men knew that one mistake could mean disaster. They planned to escape through the ventilation ducts. They would then climb to the roof of the cell block. From there, they would descend to the ground using a makeshift raft. They would then paddle to freedom. The men collected materials over many months. Raincoats, cement, wood, anything they could find. They used these materials to build their escape equipment. They worked tirelessly, driven by hope and desperation. They knew they needed a distraction, something to keep the guards occupied. They decided to stage a fake fight. This would create a diversion. It would give them a chance to slip away unnoticed. Section 6. Escape from the Rock. On the night of June 11th, 1962, the plan was put into action. It was a dark and stormy night. The wind howled. The waves crashed against the rocks. The men placed the dummy heads in their beds. They slipped through the holes behind their cells. They entered the utility corridor. They climbed to the roof. They descended to the ground. They made it to the water. They inflated their makeshift raft. They slipped into the icy cold water. They paddled away from Alcatraz. They disappeared into the night. The guards discovered the escape the next morning. They were furious. They launched a massive manhunt. Boats searched the bay. Helicopters scanned the water from above. The FBI was called in. Section 7. The investigation begins. The FBI launched a full-scale investigation. They interviewed prisoners and guards. They searched the island for clues. They examined the escape route. The investigators found the escapees' tools. They found the dummy heads. They found scraps of the raft. But the escapees themselves were nowhere to be found. The FBI considered all possibilities. Had the men drowned? Had they been eaten by sharks? Had they made it to shore? The evidence was inconclusive. The mystery deepened. The escape from Alcatraz was an embarrassment to the prison system. It showed that even the most secure prison was not foolproof. The FBI was determined to solve the case. They wanted to bring the escapees to justice.